48 hours. That's how long she had left. A 10-year-old girl found wandering Highway 9 in the middle of winter, half frozen, barefoot, whispering the same 5 words over and over, "Please don't send me back." The police did everything right. They followed protocol. They called her guardians. Her aunt and uncle showed up within the hour, perfect concern on their faces, perfect excuses on their lips. But there was one problem. A police dog named Duke wouldn't stop growling. He circled their car like he'd caught a scent of death. When the officers opened the trunk, they found groceries. Just groceries, case closed. The girl was sent home. Duke barked once as the car pulled away. Sharp, desperate, a warning no one understood. 2 days later, at 2 a.m., Duke did something that saved her life. He broke through a living room window and stopped a transaction that had already been paid for. $50,000, that's what she was worth. Inside that house, officers found a suitcase, empty, waiting, a man in an expensive coat, and a little girl who'd been sold by the only family she had left. But here's the part that shook everyone. This wasn't the first time. Her parents hadn't died in an accident 3 years earlier. They'd been murdered, and the people who killed them had been raising her ever since, waiting for the perfect moment to cash in. This is the story of the dog who smelled a lie, the girl who drew her own crime scene before it happened, and the night that exposed a trafficking network spanning 8 years, 12 states, and 46 children. Not every hero wears a uniform. Some just refuse to sit when something's wrong. Stay with us because this story will leave you speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The emergency call came through at 11:47 p.m. A child, maybe 10 years old, wandering barefoot along Highway 9 in sub-zero temperatures. Officer Martinez pulled up first, headlights cutting through the swirling snow like knives through smoke. The girl stood frozen in the beam, not like a deer caught unaware, but like someone who had given up running. Her lips were blue. Her pajamas, thin cotton meant for warm bedrooms, clung to her frame like wet paper. Frost crysted her eyelashes. When Martinez approached, she didn't speak, didn't cry, just stared past him as if he were invisible. "Sweetheart, we need to get you warm." His voice was gentle, trained for moments like this. He draped his jacket over her shoulders. She flinched but didn't pull away. In the patrol car, heat blasting, she finally whispered 5 words that would haunt Martinez for weeks. "Please don't send me back." Not home. Back. The distinction mattered. At the station, hot chocolate sat untouched in her hands. The steam rose like ghosts she couldn't see. Child services arrived within the hour, followed by her emergency contacts. An uncle and aunt, faces painted with concern that looked rehearsed, like actors hitting their marks. "Thank God you found her," the aunt gasped, rushing forward. The girl reacted like she'd been electrocuted. She scrambled backward, knocking the chair over, eyes wild with terror so raw it stopped everyone cold. "No, no, please." Her voice shattered. "Don't make me." The uncle stepped forward, hands raised in placation. "Sweetheart, we're family, you're safe now." That's when K9 Officer Rains and his German shepherd Duke entered the room. Duke, a decorated search and rescue dog with 6 years of impeccable service, did something he'd never done before. He growled. Low, deep, visceral. Not the warning bark of threat detection. This was different. Primal. Protective. Duke positioned himself between the girl and the relatives, hackles raised. Body coiled tight, his eyes never left the uncle. Rains frowned. "Duke, heel." The dog didn't move, the room fell silent. Everyone felt it, the shift. The wrongness hanging in the air like smoke no one could see but everyone could taste. The girl looked at Duke, tears finally breaking through. She whispered so quietly only the dog could hear, "You know, don't you? Sometimes the truth isn't caught by sound but by scent." Protocol dictated the next steps. The girl had no physical injuries, no signs of abuse visible to the medical examiner. Her uncle and aunt had clean records, respectable jobs, a modest home in the suburbs. On paper, they were perfect guardians. Duke didn't care about paper. Outside the station, as the relatives prepared to take her, Duke circled their car like a shark sensing blood in water. His nose worked overtime, sniffing the door handles, the wheel wells, and then he stopped. Dead still. The trunk. He pawed at it, whining. Not the excited whine of a found toy. This was distress. Alarm, "Duke, what is it?" Rains approached, hand on his holster more from instinct than logic. The uncle laughed nervously. "It's probably just groceries. We stopped on the way. Mind opening it?" Rains asked. Not a request. The uncle hesitated just a fraction of a second, but Duke caught it. So did Rains. The trunk popped open. Groceries, 2 bags, milk, bread, eggs. Nothing unusual. Duke lunged forward anyway, nose buried in the corner, pawing frantically at the carpet lining. "Officer, I really think your dog needs retraining," the aunt said, voice tight with forced patience. Rains pulled Duke back, but the dog's eyes stayed locked on that trunk. His entire body vibrated with tension. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience," Rains said finally. Procedure won over instinct. There was no evidence, no legal ground to hold them. The girl was placed in the back seat. She didn't fight. She'd learned fighting was pointless. As the car pulled away, Duke barked once. Sharp, desperate. Rains watched the taillights disappear into the night, that bark echoing in his skull like a warning he couldn't translate. Inside the station, Martinez filed the report. Case closed. Child returned to family. But that night Rains couldn't sleep. He kept seeing Duke's reaction. In 8 years of partnership, the dog had never been wrong. Not once. He pulled Duke's training records, bomb detection, narcotics. Human remains. Human remains. The thought hit him like ice water. Duke had been trained to detect decomposition. Not fresh blood, not living fear. Decomposition. Rains sat up in bed, heart hammering. Why would a dog trained to find the dead react to a living child's guardians? Unless he wasn't reacting to them. Unless he was reacting to what they'd transported. What had been in that trunk before the groceries? What lingered in scent molecules humans couldn't detect but dogs never forgot? Rains grabbed his phone, called the station. "I need that family's address." "Now?" The dispatcher hesitated. "Sir, the case is closed." "I don't care." "Give me the address." Silence. Then, "Sending it now." Rains looked at Duke. The dog was already at the door waiting. "Let's go fix this," Rains whispered. Duke barked once. They ran into the night. If he had been 5 minutes late, there would have been another name on the missing list. Rains killed the headlights 3 houses down. The neighborhood slept, unaware. Duke sat rigid in the passenger seat, eyes locked on the modest 2-story home with the blue shutters and the perfectly maintained lawn. Normal, so devastatingly normal it made Rains' skin crawl. "We're just observing," he whispered to Duke. "No heroics." Duke's ear twitched. Translation, "We'll see." Through the living room window, shadows moved. Rains pulled out his binoculars, the uncle pacing, phone pressed to his ear. His mouth moved rapidly, gestures sharp, agitated. Then the aunt appeared. She carried something, large, rectangular, a suitcase, not carried, dragged. It was heavy. Rains' blood turned to ice. The girl appeared behind them, still in her thin pajamas, standing in the hallway like a ghost. She wasn't restrained. Didn't need to be. Where would she run? The uncle ended his call, checked his watch, looked at the suitcase, then at the girl. A car pulled up outside, sleek, black, tinted windows. A man stepped out, expensive coat, leather gloves. He didn't knock, just walked in like he owned the place. Money exchanged hands. Thick stacks. Rains' stomach dropped. The man approached the girl, inspected her like livestock, tilted her chin, checked her teeth. Duke growled so low it vibrated the car frame. "Not yet," Rains hissed, hand on Duke's collar. The man nodded satisfied. He gestured to the suitcase. The uncle opened it. Empty. Waiting, the man grabbed the girl's arm. Duke exploded. Rains didn't give the command. Didn't need to. Duke was through the car window before Rains could blink. 100 pounds of fury and training and pure protective rage. Glass shattered. The living room window burst inward as Duke launched through it like a missile. Chaos erupted. The man screamed. Duke's jaws clamped onto his arm, dragging him down. The uncle lunged forward. Duke released, spun, snapped at his leg. The aunt grabbed a lamp, swung wildly. Rains crashed through the front door, weapon drawn. "Police! Nobody move!" The girl ran. Not outside. Deeper into the house. Rains let her. His focus was the man on the floor, Duke's teeth still buried in his sleeve. "Call him off." The man shrieked. "Duke, hold." Rains commanded. Duke didn't release, but he stopped shaking. Sirens wailed in the distance. Martinez had monitored Rains' radio, followed protocol, called backup the moment Rains went off-grid. 3 patrol cars screamed into the driveway. Officers flooded the house. The uncle and aunt were cuffed. The man in the expensive coat screamed about lawyers. Rains found the girl in the bathroom. Door locked. She'd wedged herself between the toilet and the wall, knees pulled to her chest. "It's over," Rains said through the door. "You're safe." Silence. Then, "Is the dog okay?" Rains smiled despite everything. "Yeah, he's okay. Wants to see you." The lock clicked, the door opened. The girl's eyes were red but dry. She'd cried all her tears long ago. Duke pushed past Rains, gentle now, and rested his head on her lap. She buried her face in his fur. "Thank you," she whispered. Duke's tail wagged once. Rains crouched down. "We need to ask you some questions. About your parents. About what happened." The girl nodded slowly. "They didn't die in an accident, did they?" Her voice was barely audible. "No." The interrogation room at the county station was designed to be non-threatening for child witnesses. Soft chairs. Warm lighting. A1 way mirror disguised as artwork. The girl sat with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, a child psychologist beside her. Duke lay at her feet, chin resting on her shoe. "Take your time," the psychologist said gently. The girl's fingers twisted in Duke's fur. "They told everyone it was a car accident. Rainy night, slick roads. My parents lost control." Rains leaned forward. "But that's not what happened." "No." Her voice was hollow. "I heard them. My uncle and aunt. They were arguing in the kitchen 2 days before it happened. I was supposed to be asleep." She paused. Duke licked her hand. "My uncle said my parents were going to report them. That they'd found something. Documents. I didn't understand then. What kind of documents?" "Adoption papers, but not real ones, fake names, different children. My aunt worked at the agency. She was forging records." The room went silent. Martinez, observing through the mirror, felt his blood pressure spike. The girl continued, voice steadier now. "Telling the truth was its own kind of relief. They killed them, made it look like an accident. The police didn't investigate. Why would they? It was just bad luck. And then they took you in," Rains said quietly. "They had to. It would look suspicious if they didn't. For a while, I thought maybe I was wrong, maybe they did care." "When did you realize they didn't?" 3 weeks ago. I found the suitcase in the attic. I thought it was my parents' things. I wanted something to remember them by." Her hands trembled. Duke pressed closer. Inside was a passport. Not mine, a girl named Elena. But the picture, it was me. Different name, different birthday, but my face. Martinez stepped out of the observation room, phone already dialing. "Get a warrant for that house. Now, I want every inch of that attic processed." Back in the interrogation room, the girl's voice cracked. "I tried to run the next day. Made it 3 blocks. My uncle caught me. He didn't hit me. He didn't have to. He just said, 'If you try that again, we'll tell everyone your parents killed themselves because of you.'" The psychologist's hand covered her mouth. I believed him. I thought maybe it was true. Maybe I was the reason they were gone. "It's not true," Rains said firmly. "None of this is your fault." That night, when they got the call that someone wanted to buy me, I knew I had one chance. So I ran. I didn't care about the cold. I just ran. "You saved yourself," Rains said. "Duke saved me." The dog's tail thumped once. The forensics team tore through the house. In the attic, hidden beneath floorboards, they found a metal lockbox. Inside 12 passports. Different names, different children, all girls between ages 6 and 12. Bank account records showing wire transfers, dates, amounts, destinations. Coded correspondence with international contacts and photographs. So many photographs. Martinez stared at the evidence spread across the conference table, nausea rising. "How long has this been going on?" The lead investigator checked the earliest dated document. "At least 8 years." "How many children?" "We're still counting." Rains stood in the doorway, Duke beside him. "The parents. We need to exhume the bodies." The captain nodded grimly. "Already filed the request." 2 weeks later, the autopsy results came back. The parents' brake lines had been cut. Not corrosion, not wear and tear, deliberately severed. The case was officially reclassified. Double homicide. The girl testified before a grand jury. 13 years old, voice steady, eyes clear. She told the truth she'd been carrying like stones in her pockets for 3 years. The indictments came down like hammers. Murder, conspiracy, child trafficking, fraud. The trial date was set. The girl asked only one thing. "Can Duke be there?" "Absolutely," Rains said. She smiled for the first time. Sometimes children see the truth before adults are willing to. The courtroom was packed. Media trucks lined the street outside like vultures. The case had exploded beyond local news, picked up by national networks, true crime podcasts, advocacy groups. Everyone wanted justice. Everyone wanted answers. The girl sat in the witness box, hands folded in her lap. She'd grown in the 6 months since her rescue. Not physically, internally. Trauma had carved her hollow, but therapy was slowly filling her back up. Duke lay beside the witness stand, certified as an emotional support animal for the proceedings. His presence was non-negotiable. The prosecutor was a woman in her 50s named Helena Reyes, famous for her take-no prisoners approach to child exploitation cases. She'd flown in from the state capital specifically for this. "Can you tell the court what happened the night you ran away?" Reyes asked gently. The girl nodded. Her voice carried through the microphone, clear and steady. "They told me someone was coming to pick me up. They said I was going on a trip. But I'd seen the suitcase. I knew what kind of trip they meant." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. The defense attorney, a slick man in a designer suit, leaned back with a smirk. His clients, the uncle and aunt, sat stone-faced. The girl continued. "I heard them talking about money, about how much I was worth." Objection. The defense attorney drawled. "Hearsay." Overruled. Judge Catherine Winters snapped. "The witness is recounting her direct experience." Reyes approached the evidence table. "Your Honor, the prosecution would like to enter Exhibits 27 through 34, audio recordings recovered from the defendant's home security system." The defense attorney's smirk faltered. The recordings played. Voices crystal clear. "How much is she worth? Depends. She's undamaged, well-behaved, 12 years old. We can get at least 50,000. And if someone asks questions, who's going to ask? Her parents are dead. We're her only family." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The aunt covered her face. The uncle stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. The girl didn't look at them. She looked at Duke. Reyes let the silence sit, let it suffocate. "The defense has argued," she said slowly, "that my client is confused, traumatized, that her memories are unreliable." She turned to the girl. "Do you remember where they were going to take you?" "A warehouse." "Near the docks. How do you know that?" "I heard the address. I memorized it." The defense attorney shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is—" "Sit down," Judge Winters said coldly. The girl reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I drew this," she said quietly, "the night before I ran. I thought if something happened to me, maybe someone would find it." She unfolded it. A child's drawing. Crayon and pencil, but detailed. Unnervingly detailed. A building, corrugated metal walls, a blue door with a broken hinge, a street sign Pier 7, numbers on the door Unit 20B. Reyes projected the image onto the courtroom screen. Then she placed another image beside it. A photograph. Taken by the police raid team 3 weeks after the girl's rescue. The same building, the same blue door, the same broken hinge, the same sign, Pier 7, Unit 20B. Identical. The courtroom erupted. Judge Winters slammed her gavel. "Order." The defense attorney was on his feet, face red. "That doesn't prove." "It proves," Reyes said, voice cutting like glass, "that this child told the truth from the very beginning. That she knew exactly where she was being taken. That she had no reason to know that location unless she overheard it directly from the defendants." She turned to the jury. "A 13-year-old girl drew a map to her own intended grave, and we ignored her." The girl's eyes filled with tears, not from pain, from validation. Someone finally believed her. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. The uncle received life without parole. The aunt received 35 years. The man in the expensive coat, traced through financial records, was arrested in Dubai. Extradition pending. When the verdict was read, the girl didn't cheer, didn't cry. She just looked at Duke. "We did it," she whispered. Duke's tail wagged. Outside the courthouse, Reyes crouched down to the girl's level. "You were the bravest witness I've ever seen." The girl shook her head. "I just told the truth. That's what brave is." The girl smiled. Small, fragile, real. She knelt beside Duke, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You're a good boy," she whispered. Duke licked her face. Justice, for once, had teeth. Sometimes children see the truth before adults are willing to. The courtroom was packed. Media trucks lined the street outside like vultures. The case had exploded beyond local news, picked up by national networks, true crime podcasts, advocacy groups. Everyone wanted justice. Everyone wanted answers. The girl sat in the witness box, hands folded in her lap. She'd grown in the 6 months since her rescue. Not physically, internally. Trauma had carved her hollow, but therapy was slowly filling her back up. Duke lay beside the witness stand, certified as an emotional support animal for the proceedings. His presence was non-negotiable. The prosecutor was a woman in her 50s named Helena Reyes, famous for her take-no-prisoners approach to child exploitation cases. She'd flown in from the state capital specifically for this. "Can you tell the court what happened the night you ran away?" Reyes asked gently. The girl nodded. Her voice carried through the microphone, clear and steady. "They told me someone was coming to pick me up. They said I was going on a trip. But I'd seen the suitcase. I knew what kind of trip they meant." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. The defense attorney, a slick man in a designer suit, leaned back with a smirk. His clients, the uncle and aunt, sat stone-faced. The girl continued. "I heard them talking about money, about how much I was worth." Objection. The defense attorney drawled. "Hearsay." Overruled. Judge Catherine Winters snapped. "The witness is recounting her direct experience." Reyes approached the evidence table. "Your Honor, the prosecution would like to enter Exhibits 27 through 34. Audio recordings recovered from the defendant's home security system." The defense attorney's smirk faltered. The recordings played. Voices crystal clear. "How much is she worth? Depends. She's undamaged, well-behaved, 12 years old. We can get at least 50,000. And if someone asks questions, who's going to ask? Her parents are dead. We're her only family." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. The aunt covered her face. The uncle stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. The girl didn't look at them. She looked at Duke. Reyes let the silence sit, let it suffocate. "The defense has argued," she said slowly, "that my client is confused, traumatized, that her memories are unreliable." She turned to the girl. "Do you remember where they were going to take you?" "A warehouse." "Near the docks. How do you know that?" "I heard the address. I memorized it." The defense attorney shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is—" "Sit down," Judge Winters said coldly. The girl reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I drew this," she said quietly, "the night before I ran. I thought if something happened to me, maybe someone would find it." She unfolded it. A child's drawing. Crayon and pencil, but detailed. Unnervingly detailed. A building, corrugated metal walls, a blue door with a broken hinge, a street sign Pier 7, numbers on the door Unit 20B. Reyes projected the image onto the courtroom screen. Then she placed another image beside it. A photograph. Taken by the police raid team 3 weeks after the girl's rescue. The same building, the same blue door, the same broken hinge, the same sign, Pier 7, Unit 20B. Identical. The courtroom erupted. Judge Winters slammed her gavel. "Order." The defense attorney was on his feet, face red. "That doesn't prove." "It proves," Reyes said, voice cutting like glass, "that this child told the truth from the very beginning. That she knew exactly where she was being taken. That she had no reason to know that location unless she overheard it directly from the defendants." She turned to the jury. "A 13-year-old girl drew a map to her own intended grave, and we ignored her." The girl's eyes filled with tears, not from pain, from validation. Someone finally believed her. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. The uncle received life without parole. The aunt received 35 years. The man in the expensive coat, traced through financial records, was arrested in Dubai. Extradition pending. When the verdict was read, the girl didn't cheer, didn't cry. She just looked at Duke. "We did it," she whispered. Duke's tail wagged. Outside the courthouse, Reyes crouched down to the girl's level. "You were the bravest witness I've ever seen." The girl shook her head. "I just told the truth. That's what brave is." The girl smiled. Small, fragile, real. She knelt beside Duke, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You're a good boy," she whispered. Duke licked her face. Justice, for once, had teeth. 6 months after the trial, the girl still wasn't speaking. Not in court, she'd spoken there, clear, steady, strong. But everywhere else, silence. At school, she sat alone at lunch, headphones on, eyes down. Teachers reported she completed her work meticulously but never raised her hand. Never asked questions, never spoke unless directly required. At the foster home, she was polite. Helpful, quiet. Too quiet. Margaret tried everything. Game nights, movie marathons, baking together. The girl participated, smiled occasionally, but the words stayed locked inside. She's disassociating, Dr. Patel, her trauma therapist, explained during a consultation. The trial forced her to relive everything. Now that it's over, her mind is protecting her the only way it knows how, shutting down. Will she get better? Margaret asked, fear creeping into her voice. That depends on her. Trauma recovery isn't linear. Some days will be better. Some will be worse. Margaret nodded, but her heart ached. The girl overheard the conversation from the hallway. She didn't mean to eavesdrop. She'd come downstairs for water and heard her name. Shutting down. Was that what she was doing? She thought about it that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Duke was curled at her feet. Margaret had officially adopted him as a therapy dog specifically for her. He went everywhere she went. School, therapy, the grocery store. He was her shadow, and the only one she talked to. Do you think I'm broken? She whispered into the darkness. Duke's ear twitched. He lifted his head, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. Dr. Patel says I need to process my feelings. But what if I don't want to? What if letting them out makes it real again? Duke shifted, crawling up the bed until his head rested on her chest. She wrapped her arms around him. You don't care that I don't talk, do you? His tail wagged slowly. I wish everyone else was like you. She closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come. It rarely did. Nightmares waited in the dark. The suitcase. The hands grabbing her. The cold ride in the trunk she'd only imagined but felt real anyway. The next day, Dr. Patel tried a different approach. We're not going to talk today, she said as the girl entered the office. Duke trotted beside her, tail wagging. The girl blinked in surprise. Instead, I want you to draw anything, everything, nothing. Whatever comes out, Dr. Patel placed a large sketch pad and colored pencils on the table. The girl hesitated, then sat down. Duke settled at her feet. For 10 minutes, she didn't move. Just stared at the blank page. Then her hand moved. She drew a house, small, dark windows, a door that looked like a mouth. She drew a suitcase beside it, open, empty. She drew a girl standing far away, tiny, alone. And then she drew a dog, bigger than the girl, standing between her and the house. Dr. Patel watched silently. The girl set down the pencil, stared at the drawing, and then, for the first time in 6 months, she cried. Not quiet tears, not restrained sniffles. She sobbed. Loud, gasping, guttural sobs that shook her entire body. Duke stood immediately, pressing against her, whining softly. Dr. Patel moved closer but didn't touch. It's okay. Let it out. The girl buried her face in Duke's fur, screaming into his neck. All the fear, the rage, the helplessness she'd bottled up since the night she ran poured out in waves. Duke didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just stood there, solid and warm and safe. When the tears finally subsided, the girl pulled back, face red and blotchy, but her eyes were clearer than they'd been in months. I was so scared, she whispered. The first real words she'd spoken outside of obligation. I know, Dr. Patel said gently. I thought no one would believe me, but they did. The girl nodded slowly. Because of Duke. She looked down at the dog. He looked back, brown eyes steady and kind. Thank you, she whispered. Duke licked her hand. The silence had finally broken. And underneath it, she was still there. 2 years after the trial, the girl turned 15. She'd grown taller, her hair longer, her voice stronger. She no longer flinched when adults approached. She no longer slept with the lights on. But she still kept Duke close. Dr. Patel noticed the shift during their weekly sessions. The girl didn't just answer questions anymore. She asked them, how do other kids deal with this? She asked one afternoon. Deal with what specifically? Knowing what happened to them. Living with it. Dr. Patel leaned forward. Why do you ask? The girl hesitated. Duke, now graying slightly around his muzzle, rested his head on her knee. Because I want to help them. Dr. Patel's expression softened. That's a beautiful instinct. But you need to make sure you're ready. I am? How do you know? Because I'm not scared anymore. She paused. Well, I'm still scared sometimes. But it doesn't control me. Dr. Patel smiled. Then let's talk about what that help could look like. 3 months later, the girl stood in front of a small group at the County Advocacy Center. 5 children, ages 8 to 14, all survivors of trafficking, abuse, or exploitation. All terrified, all silent. Margaret sat in the back of the room, hands clasped tightly. Agent Chen stood beside her. Rains and Duke waited near the door. The girl cleared her throat. "Hi, my name is—" She paused. She'd never used her real name publicly since the trial. Too dangerous. Too exposing. But these kids didn't need a fake name. They needed the truth. "My name is Emma." It was the first time she'd said it aloud in 3 years. "I was 13 when my uncle and aunt tried to sell me to a stranger. I ran away in the middle of winter wearing pajamas. I thought I was going to die." The children stared at her, wide-eyed. "But I didn't die, and you didn't either, and that matters." One of the younger girls raised her hand tentatively. "How did you stop being scared?" Emma smiled sadly. "I didn't. I'm still scared sometimes. But I learned something important." She knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with the children. "Being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you survived something that was supposed to break you." A boy in the back, maybe 12, spoke up. "Do you still have nightmares?" "Sometimes." "Does it get easier?" Emma glanced at Duke. "Yeah, it does. Not all at once, not every day, but little by little, the good days start to outnumber the bad ones." Another girl, older, arms crossed defensively, asked, "Why are you here? What do you get out of this?" Emma met her gaze steadily. "Nothing. Except knowing that you don't have to feel alone." The girl's expression flickered. Something like hope. After the session, Agent Chen approached Emma. "You're a natural." Emma shrugged. "I just told them what I wish someone had told me. Would you be willing to do this again?" "How often?" "Once a month. We have new kids coming through the program constantly." Emma looked at Duke. He wagged his tail. "Okay." Over the next year, Emma became a fixture at the advocacy center. She didn't just speak at sessions. She sat with kids one-on-one. She answered questions. She listened. She brought Duke to every session. The dog, now officially certified as a therapy animal, had a gift for knowing which child needed him most. He'd wander over, rest his head on their lap, and just stay there. Some kids cried. Some didn't speak at all. Some asked a million questions. Emma met them all where they were. One afternoon, a girl named Sophia, 9 years old, pulled Emma aside. "Do you think I'll ever be normal?" Emma crouched down. "What's normal?" Sophia frowned. "I don't know. Like other kids." Emma smiled gently. "You are like other kids. You like ice cream, right?" Sophia nodded. "And you get annoyed when people tell you what to do." A small smile. "Then you're already normal. What happened to you doesn't change who you are. It's just part of your story. But it's a bad part, maybe. But every story has bad parts and good parts. You get to decide which ones you let define you." Sophia thought about that. "What do you let define you?" Emma looked at Duke. "The fact that I didn't give up, and the people who helped me when I needed it most." Like the dog. Like the dog. Sophia reached out, tentatively petting Duke's head. He leaned into her touch. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Sophia whispered. Emma's throat tightened. "You already are." Trauma had tried to destroy her. Instead, it had forged her into something stronger. A survivor. A voice. A light for others still trapped in the dark. The adoption papers were finalized on a Thursday. Margaret had fostered Emma for 2 years, but the legal process to officially adopt her had been complicated. Background checks, home visits, psychological evaluations, court hearings. But finally it was done. Emma Chen Foster, that was her name now, legally, permanently. Margaret cried when the judge signed the papers. Emma didn't. She'd cried enough. Instead, she smiled small, genuine, real. "Welcome home," Margaret whispered, pulling her into a hug. Emma hugged back. "I've been home for a while." "I know. But now it's official." They celebrated quietly, just the two of them. Takeout Chinese food, Emma's favorite, and a movie marathon. Duke sprawled across the couch between them, snoring softly. It felt normal. Blissfully, beautifully normal. But that night, when Emma went to bed, the old familiar anxiety crept back. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Duke curled at the foot of her bed. The house was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that used to terrify her because silence meant she was alone, and being alone meant danger could creep in unnoticed. Her heart rate picked up. Her palms started to sweat. "You're safe," she told herself. "You're home. Margaret is right downstairs. Duke is right here. You're safe." But logic didn't stop the panic. She sat up, pulling her knees to her chest, focusing on her breathing the way Dr. Patel had taught her. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Duke lifted his head. Immediately alert, he crawled up the bed, pressing his body against hers. "I'm okay," Emma whispered. "Just a bad moment." Duke licked her cheek. She wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his fur. He smelled like the lavender shampoo Margaret used when she bathed him. Safe. Familiar. I don't know why I'm still scared, she admitted quietly. Everything's good now. I'm adopted. I'm safe. The bad people are in prison. So why can't I just be okay? Duke didn't answer. He just stayed. Emma closed her eyes, focusing on the steady rise and fall of his breathing. Slom. Rhythmic. Her own breathing began to match his. In, out, in, out. The panic started to ebb. A soft knock sounded at the door. Yuma, you okay? Margaret. Emma hesitated, then said, yeah. Just couldn't sleep. The door opened. Margaret stood in her pajamas, hair messy, concern etched across her face. Want some company? Emma nodded. Margaret sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't ask questions. Didn't push. Just sat there, a quiet presence in the dark. I thought I'd be over this by now, Emma said finally. Over what? The fear, the nightmares. The feeling like something bad is going to happen any second. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Healing isn't a destination. It's a process. Some days you'll feel strong. Some days you won't. That's okay. It doesn't feel okay. I know. Margaret gently brushed Emma's hair back. But you've come so far. 2 years ago, you wouldn't even let me hug you. Now you're helping other kids. You're going to school. You're building a life. But I still can't sleep without the nightlight. So, I can't sleep without a fan running. Everyone has something? Emma managed a small smile. Margaret stood. I'll leave you to rest. But if you need me, I'm right downstairs. Margaret. She turned back. Yeah, thank you. For not giving up on me. Margaret's eyes glistened. Never. After she left, Emma lay back down. Duke settled beside her, his head resting on her shoulder. She stared at the ceiling, but this time the fear didn't come. Instead, she thought about the past 2 years. The trial, the therapy, the advocacy work. The little girl, Sophia, who'd told her she wanted to be like her when she grew up. She thought about Duke, who'd found her when she needed him most. She thought about Margaret, who'd chosen her. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, Emma felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Peace. She closed her eyes. Duke's breathing slowed. His warmth seeped into her, and Emma slept. No nightmares, no panic attacks, no waking up in a cold sweat, just sleep, deep, restful, uninterrupted sleep. When she woke the next morning, sunlight streamed through the window. Birds chirped outside. Duke was still beside her, tail thumping lazily against the blanket. Emma stretched, feeling lighter than she had in years. She padded downstairs. Margaret was making pancakes. Morning, Emma said. Margaret turned, smiling. Morning. Sleep okay? Emma paused, considering the question, then she smiled back. Yeah, I really did. 3 years later, Emma stood in the auditorium of Lincoln High School. She was 17 now, a senior, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing a simple blue dress. She looked like any other teenager. But she wasn't. The assembly had been organized by the school counselor, Miss Rivera, as part of National Child Safety Month. Emma had been asked to speak. She'd said yes without hesitation. Beside the stage, Duke lay quietly, now 9 years old, gray streaking his muzzle like frost. He moved slower these days, his hips stiff with arthritis. But his eyes were still sharp, still watchful. The auditorium filled with students, restless, chattering. Most had no idea who Emma was. To them, she was just another student giving another assembly talk they'd forget by lunch. Ms. Rivera took the microphone. Thank you all for being here. Today's speaker is someone I deeply admire. She's going to share her story. I ask that you listen with open hearts. Emma stepped onto the stage. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't let it stop her. She looked out at the sea of faces. Some curious, some bored, some glued to their phones. She cleared her throat. 4 years ago, I ran away from home in the middle of winter wearing nothing but pajamas. I was barefoot. It was below freezing. I didn't care. Because I knew if I stayed I would disappear forever. The room quieted. My uncle and aunt were going to sell me to a stranger. Not for drugs, not for revenge. For money, $50,000. That's what I was worth to them. Phones were lowered. Eyes lifted. I was found by a police officer who brought me back to the station. And that officer did everything right. He followed protocol. He called my guardians. He tried to keep me safe. She paused, but it was a dog who saved my life. Duke's ears perked at the word dog. Emma smiled. His name is Duke. He's a retired K9. And the night I was found, he did something he'd never done before. He growled at my guardians. He pawed at their car. He refused to sit. She gestured toward Duke, who stood slowly, tail wagging. The students murmured, some pointing, some smiling. Duke couldn't speak. He couldn't tell anyone what he smelled or what he sensed, but he knew. And even when everyone ignored him, he didn't give up. Emma's voice grew stronger. Because of Duke, an officer named Rains followed his instincts. He went back to that house. And he found me right before I was put into a suitcase and shipped to another country. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. The trial that followed exposed a trafficking network that had been operating for 8 years. 19 children were rescued. 46 victims were identified. Dozens of people were arrested. She looked down at Duke. And it all started because one dog refused to walk away. The room was silent. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something. Heroes don't always look like superheroes. Sometimes they're teachers who notice when a student is struggling. Sometimes they're friends who ask, "Are you okay?" and actually wait for the answer. She stepped closer to the edge of the stage. And sometimes they're a dog who barks when everyone else is silent. Duke barked once, right on cue. Laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking the tension. Emma smiled. If you see something wrong, say something. If you feel unsafe, tell someone. And if no one listens the first time, tell someone else. Keep telling until someone hears you. She glanced at Ms. Rivera, then back at the students. Because you deserve to be heard. You deserve to be safe. And you deserve to know that even in the darkest moments, there are people and dogs who will fight for you. The auditorium erupted in applause. Emma stepped back, exhaling shakily. Duke trotted over and she knelt, wrapping her arms around him. "Good boy," she whispered. His tail wagged harder. Ms. Rivera approached, wiping her eyes. That was incredible. Emma stood. I just told the truth. That's what made it powerful. As the students filed out, several approached Emma. Some thanked her. Some asked questions. One girl, tears streaming down her face, whispered, "That happened to me too." Emma took her hand. "You're not alone anymore." The girl nodded, clinging to Emma's hand like a lifeline. Duke pressed against the girl's leg, offering silent comfort, and Emma realized something profound. She wasn't just a survivor anymore, she was a voice, a protector, a light, and so was Duke. Together, they had turned pain into purpose, trauma into testimony, silence into strength. Not every hero wears a cape, some just bark. If this story moved you, if Duke's instinct or Emma's courage made you feel something real, do me a favor, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that heroes come in all forms. And subscribe, because there are more stories like this, stories the world tried to bury, that deserve to be told. You being here matters more than you know.